Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 100. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Heather Hubbard. We are at 100. Holy cow. That is just insane to me. And, I kind of thought, do I need to do something special for, episode 100? And I was like, no, we're just going to keep doing it the way we do it. We do have a special episode coming up, and that is to celebrate 100 episodes of Hustle and Flow. And it is going to be you. It's going to highlight you. So if you have not already, please go to heatherjoyhubbard.com/record. And that will be in the show notes, and it'll be right there on iTunes for you. What I want you to do is go on over there and hit record. You don't have to have a fancy mic. Don't worry about, do I sound great? Do I need to script this out? No, just do it super quick. I want you to get on there. It's super easy. It's like on the website itself. All you have to do is hit a button. It will ask for your name and your email. That's mostly just to avoid spam. And if you make it onto the show, I want to introduce who you are. So what you're going to do is you just go on there and you say, I'm going to make this up. Hi, I'm Julie, and I practice employment law in Omaha, Nebraska. And my favorite episode of Hustle and Flow is, and I've taken that and used it in my practice in this way, and it's made a huge difference, and whatever, right? It's super easy. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I want to collect your stories. I want to hear from you in your own words, in your own voice. What has been your favorite episode of Hustle and Flow so far, and why? Like, how has it helped you? And maybe just how you've taken it and made it your own, right? I always say, take what works and leave the rest, and make it your own. Allie Dalton, she actually reached out to me on Instagram this morning, so shout out to Allie. She said, I really didn't want to do the vision board. Like, I kept trying to figure out how to do it, but she's a big fan of Marie Kondo. And so, it's all about joy and simplicity and not having a lot of stuff in your house. And she was like, it just wasn't bringing me much joy. So she ended up doing a Pinterest board instead. So that's a perfect example of you can take something that I'm sharing on the podcast and then make it your own, make it work for you. So any stories that you have to share where the podcast has just meant so much to you or has really helped you, or you want to share something where you took it, made it your own so that you can share it to all of the other listeners, like that's what I'm looking for so that we can celebrate 100 episodes together. So go over to heatherjoyhubbard.com/record, and it would mean so, so much to me if you participate. Okay, episode 100. Oh my goodness, I can't get over it. All right, so today what we're talking about is your word of the year, as well as some other New Year rituals. So I love rituals, and I love the week between Christmas and New Year. Partly because it's my birthday, but also because there's just something about that week where I don't know, it's like the one and only week where most of America shuts down. So you truly can, even if you're working, spend time doing things related to you. You can really spend time reflecting. You can really spend time planning. And for the most part, you don't have too many emergencies that pop up. So it's kind of just this beautiful, magical week. And that's when I do most of my rituals. Although this year was a bit different because I had Life and Law Live in November, and I never ask anyone to do something that I wouldn't do. So I had to do some of my planning and reflecting back in October to actually prep for November. So I brushed that off and reflected again, made sure it was all still good to go during that week. But there is definitely something magical about that week and something magical about the new year. But that doesn't mean it's the only time you can do it. I was on the phone with someone the other day. We were prepping for a workshop that we're doing at her firm, and we were talking about when was the best date to do it. And I really wanted to get it done in early January. And she rightfully pointed out, she was like, there's nothing, I don't remember if she said magic, but there's nothing special. There's nothing magic about January 1. Like, you can start your plan, you can do your stuff at any given point. And she's right. There is actually something magical about January 1 for whatever reason. Like, it's just, it's that feeling of it as a fresh start. But you can do that any day that you choose to be your fresh start. So if you don't have your own rituals, if you have not actually planned yet, maybe you were with your family fully present and now you're just now getting back to work and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I should consider doing those things. That's fine. You can do it now. What I don't want you to do, and I think what her point was, if you get to January 15 or even February 15 or even March 15 and you don't yet have a plan in place or you haven't yet reflected, don't say, well, I guess I'll wait till 2020. Like, that's ridiculous. Just say, today's my fresh start, right? So that's why we're still talking about this. You can choose whatever day that looks like for you. And even though you probably don't have that wonderful time of not a lot of distractions, you do still have the opportunity, because I think there's still some magic in the air throughout all of January, where you can say, okay, we're going to make this year awesome. And that's really just setting intentions, by the way. I've shared in the last few episodes, we bring our old selves with us, even when we try to leave things behind, even when we say things are going to be different. Like, our old self comes with us, including our habits, our neuroscience, all of that. But that doesn't mean that we say, I fully accept who I am and therefore whatever is, right? No, you still want to be intentional. You still want to make sure that you are really thinking about where you want your life to go. Not from this controlling perfectionist perspective, but from this, you've only got one life. You might as well spend it being intentional and really enjoy the life that you are creating. Okay. So in that sense, if you really want to be intentional this year, I'm going to share some things that you can do. And it could be you've already got your plan set, but you still might want to do these things just because they're fun and they'll help you really solidify the goals that you have, the plan that you have, and make sure that, one, it's accurate. It truly reflects what you're wanting to do. And two, you've really got a strong foundation in place to set yourself up for success. Okay, so I'm going to share with you all of my rituals. And some of them, I guess are a bit quirky. They're perfectly normal to me. But the fact that I don't normally talk about them means that indeed it's probably because I'm worried of what you guys will think. And I'm going to share. I don't care. So hopefully you'll at least be intrigued. All right, so let's start with the word of the year. And that's probably going to weave into everything I'm going to tell you about. And then we'll loop back again at the end related to the word of the year. But this is something, and I'm sure many of you have done it before, that really helps you define your intentions for the year. In my mind, it helps you define your priorities. So if you've ever heard me talk about anything related to time management, or even just what you want out of life, it's all about priorities. You have to prioritize. And when you make decisions, everything needs to go through that filter. It needs to go through that lens of your priority. And that's really what the word of the year is all about. It is like your overarching priority that is going to help you make big decisions and small decisions. Now, there is no perfect order in which to do these rituals. It really depends on what feels easiest and best for you at the time. I kind of change mine up every single year. So I have the same rituals, but the order in which I do them can change based on really what I feel most comfortable with. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of this is creative. A lot of this is the right side of the brain. A lot of this taps into your heart and your emotions. And if you're anything like me with that lawyer brain, that can sometimes be difficult. It's not always easy to tap into that. So with one of my rituals, if I just feel like I'm not getting it, right? Like I'm not in the right space, or it's just feeling way too difficult or hard, then I do it later. Because some years it's easier for me to do one creative thing over another. And the more you then work through them, it opens up the space to be more creative and really tap into what your soul is wanting for whatever ritual that you're doing towards the end. I get that's all a bit vague at the moment, but that's really how you do it. You just got to kind of feel your way through the order. Now, your tendency is going to be when you are picking your word of the year to use the left side of your brain, right? You're going to want to be perfectly logical about it. And that's going to totally trip you up. As I've said over and over again, if you are just focusing on the left side of the brain, if you are just focusing on logic, you may still accomplish your goals, right? Like you may still be focused, but that was never the right priority to begin with. This is why so many of us can go after goals and achieve goals and still not be happy. We think that climbing one more ladder, right? One more rung on the ladder, like that's what's going to make us happy. But then we achieve it and we're like, maybe we get a little bit of excitement from it, but then we go right back to, well, that didn't really do the trick. So let me go after something else. Well, part of that is because you're letting your mind and not your heart and soul dictate or define what it is that you really want. So that's part of the issue. Okay. The other part is when you let your mind make all of these decisions, you're less likely to stick with it because it's not actually motivating. Okay. So you're actually less likely to reach the goal because it's something you feel like you should do, or it's just part of, this very bland corporate plan. So we want you to, one, achieve the goal, and two, we want to make sure it's the right goal to begin with. And the way you figure that out, the way you stay motivated, the way you make sure you're going toward the right thing is to use that right side of the brain, tap into your emotion. And so that's what should be driving your word for the year. And because of that, your word for the year is really a feeling more than anything else. It's how do you want to feel? And again, that can be really hard for some of us to figure out. I'm okay with feelings. I'm not great. I think I'm really good at identifying feelings. I'm just not really good at having or showing them. But I know so many attorneys that I work with, like who can't even identify the feelings to begin with. They literally just don't even know where to begin. So that may be you. And if that's the case, then you don't want to start with the word. You're going to want to go in a different order. But your word for the year is very much something that's going to guide you. So what do you want more of? What do you want less of? And what is a word that could represent what you want more or less of in a way that it can direct and guide you? My word for the year for 2018, last year, was Beyonce. And you might think, well, that's not a feeling, but it is. It was for me. I knew exactly what that meant. This word is, by the way, this word is for you and no one else. People don't have to understand what it means. You don't have to be able to explain it. As long as you resonate with the word, as long as you hear the word and it taps into that feeling that you are looking for, then you know you got the right word. So for me, my word came first last year. I was at a conference in Dallas in, I believe it was late October. And I got this invite from two women that I didn't know. So Jordan Gill and Jerisha Hawk were kind of just co-hosting this get together at Jordan's home. And they, because you can see who's at the conference, and they reached out and they were just like, hey, I see that we have a lot of mutual Facebook friends. You're invited. Do you want to come over? And I didn't know them. I didn't know any of the other women that were going to be there. But I am so glad that the somewhat introvert in me said yes and got in an Uber and went to, at the time, it was a random person's house. It was so much fun. And it was just such an awesome night of conversation. And I'm just so thankful that they invited me in and included me in that. It is so powerful when women get together like that. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a squirrel moment, but it really was meaningful. And I appreciated that they were so thoughtful to bring together a group of women like that just to collaborate and share. But one of the things that we were talking about at the end was, what's going to be your word for the year, for the next year? And so at that moment, I kind of had to think about what was my word, and I didn't even have to think about it. I just knew what it was. And so they got to me and I was like, Beyonce. And everybody started laughing because everyone had in their own mind what that meant. And they said, like, you're going to have to define that for us. But it was what everyone thought. And the thought was, through that lens, through that filter, I wanted 2018 to be the year where I owned my power. I was unapologetic, and I was just me. I went for anything and everything that I wanted to go after, and I put everything behind it. Everyone knows that Beyonce is very much a perfectionist. She really has high standards, and she goes for whatever she wants, and she does it unapologetically. And so that was really what I wanted to do. And I did. I used that through the filter of everything I did when I was afraid, when I questioned, who am I to do this? When I questioned, is this the right time? Or do I have enough credibility? Anything like that. Even like, can I wear this outfit at my live event? I asked myself, well, what would Beyonce do? And yeah, I bought the glittery, shiny jumpsuit and wore it anyway. And I just went for things. And, to some extent, it very much, made me kind of go back to some of my perfectionist workaholic tendencies, but that's fine. That was the word for my year, and it served its purpose. So that's what it's all about. Now, this year was a bit different because I've been trying to kind of consider what's the word, and I've not really known. I've not really known what that word is. And it's the very last thing that I've done this year. So before I tell you what my word for 2019 is, I'm going to walk you through some of those other rituals that help me get to the place of discovering what that word is, because that's what it is to me. It's really more discovering the word than, trying to control it or manipulate it. And in that moment, last October in Dallas, I did discover the word, because it just came to me. There was no effort involved whatsoever. Okay, so this year I started with my vision board, and I did that in October because, again, I knew that I was going to be asking the people showing up to Life and Law Live to do a vision board. And that was so early that I needed to make sure that I could still tap into the energy of 2019 in October of 2018. And it still worked. And it did, although my husband and some of my friends gave me grief for doing a vision board in October. It still worked. So the vision board came first. Now, here's what's interesting. I did the vision board in October. I took it with me to Life and Law Live. We did some stuff around that. And because I was traveling with it, I had it between, cardboard, and I brought it home in, I don't know what that was, November 11th, 12th, something like that. And it's just been sitting in my office completely covered up until I got it out on January 1 and changed it out. So I keep mine in a frame hanging in my office. And so that's one of my rituals. Regardless of when I do the vision board on January 1, I change out the vision board. And I write the dates on the back of all my vision boards and I keep them. And I do that because, I keep a lot of journals and things like that, but I don't really need to go back through those. I can look at a vision board alone and it tells me exactly what that year represented. And it tells me where I still reached my vision. So a lot of times when you set your vision board, sometimes it represents things that you're wanting that doesn't come to fruition that year because sometimes, right, you need more time, a longer runway to make things happen. And so sometimes we think, I didn't do all of these things in this year. But then when you look back at a few years prior, you're like, oh, wow, I did those things, but we forget about them, but they still come to life. It's just, it took a few years to get there. But the vision, you'd already planted the seeds, you had already put it into motion. So I like to keep mine. So anyway, I dusted it off and I put it up. But so when I do my vision boards, and you guys have episode number 98, if you've not done your vision board yet, I highly encourage you do so. And if you don't want to actually do old school and pull out paper and magazines, you can definitely do a digital version. You can put it on your desktop. I like to use it as a reminder. I like to see it each and every day to keep me focused on what I really want. And like I said, I have mine in a really nice frame, so it looks like artwork. In my office, you can do whatever you want, but if you follow the steps that I provide, I do mine a bit differently than I think most people do. It really helps you tap into what you're wanting as opposed to just documenting your goals, right? This goes back to you want to make sure that you have the right things set to begin with. So if you're really following your heart and your soul on your vision board, it's going to represent to you what you're wanting more of in the new year. So if you haven't done that yet, go back and listen to it, episode number 98. It tells you exactly how to do it. And your vision board will often surprise you. So for me this year, that was the hardest vision board I've ever done. Normally it's really easy for me. Maybe part of it was because it was October. I don't know. But I kept having to move around the pieces, and I had like 2 different vision boards and that I had kind of like put together. I didn't actually paste it down yet. And both felt okay, but neither felt right. And so I just had to keep moving things around until it felt right. And on that one, it felt right, but I didn't like it. I know that sounds weird, but it was just not what in my mind, this is what had happened. The logical part of my mind very much wanted it to represent a certain thing. And it's not what the vision board was reflecting. But intuitively and emotionally, it felt right. So this is where you really have to learn to balance the two and know where something's coming from. Like, is it coming from your mind or is it coming from your heart? And the interesting thing is when, I had slept on it, a few days later, I looked at it again and I loved it. My mind loved it. I already knew it was right, but I had embraced it, right? Because there were a lot of changes coming and, my mind just needed a minute. So definitely the vision board is part of my rituals. Planning, goal setting, also part of my rituals. That we're not going to go into that. If you've not done the planning extravaganza, there's a little bit of time left. It was a 4-day event, but we've got all of the videos and all of the worksheets and everything set up so you can go just to one website and get everything that you need, and you can just go through it in one day if you wanted. It wouldn't even take a full day. If you're still interested in doing that, just go to planningextravaganza.com and you'll get access to all of that stuff. But so obviously the planning, that's one of the things I do. But some of the more creative, interesting things that I do, this part of my ritual, one is I do what's called a yearly forecast. And the yearly forecast is through tarot cards. Now, I usually hire someone. I generally hire Danielle Mercurio to do my forecast reading for me, my tarot reading. And basically, what that is I'm not going to go into all of how tarot works, but this particular forecast reading it's a card represents each month. And then we generally do like an overarching card as well. That's kind of like the theme for the year. And so here's why I do it. It's not really a way to say, okay, what do the cards say are in my future? It's a way of just kind of having a feel for what the energy of the year is going to be like. So you kind of just know what's coming up, and it's not to change it. It's just to say, okay, I see that. I know what it is. I'm not going to let it trip me up. I can just better be in it. And it's actually part of my review process each well. So every month I then actually look at what I'm doing for the month and I compare it to the reading just to kind of prep me. Now, last year it was way off. My reading was way off. And so I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I went back because, by the way, I love tarot. So I have a lot of my own tarot and oracle card decks. And so I was looking back through it and I was looking at the cards as opposed to her interpretation. I was like, oh, they were actually really accurate. I think she just didn't want to be as brutally honest as how bad the tarot cards were for me last year. I think she was putting positive spins on them, but who knows? She's actually really great. I love her. And so anyway, I thought, you know what? I'm going to just do my own reading this year. And I did, because like I said, I know the cards really well. I know how they work and I have my own intuition. So I did it myself this year, and that really helped as well, because it really was reflecting a lot of not just what I had planned out, but even more. And again, for me, I just really like that intuitive piece of there is, my mind, my heart, and my soul. And then in my mind, something that is greater than myself, that there's other things at play. Now, again, you might be totally freaked out now and you're like, what is she even talking about? But for those of you that are also secretly kind of into this stuff, you might be like, yes. But anyway, that's one of my rituals. Okay, another one of my rituals, astrology. Oh my goodness. I love astrology. So if you've got your birth chart, if you understand all of that, if it is actually, I'm trying to think, last year I had an astrologist come over and I had a lot of girlfriends, many lawyers come over to get their astrology readings. And even those who had never experienced it before were like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing because it's freakishly correct. There was only one person who I think had a lot of doubt and wasn't really into it. But anyway, we had a lot of fun with it. And so I always want I want to know the astrology. I'm very much into the moon signs, the sun signs, where we are with everything. And I keep track of that. That's part of my monthly planning. And so I can actually read a lot of the charts myself, but I always try to get someone else to do that as well. And if you guys are listening to this and you're like, I'm actually intrigued, let me know. I can bring one of my favorite astrologists on. And I had someone at one of my retreats. I'm not going to call her out, but she is way into astrology. And a lot of people go to her for what's the best date to do this? So maybe we could have her on the show. That would be fun. So anyway, I also figure out I want to look at the astrology for the year based on when I was born, my birth chart. And so then with all of that in mind, to me, it's layers. I'm just looking at each and every layer. And again, a bit of an aside, but I should have known that something was off when my astrology reading and my tarot reading were quite different. The astrology was more correct. So anyway, I have all that for this year. I pulled out my vision board on January 1, and I'd already been thinking about kind of what the words would be. There's been some words kind of going around in my head, but none have felt perfectly aligned. And it was interesting because I pulled the vision board out and so many of the words that I was contemplating were on the vision board. And I had totally forgotten what was on the vision board. And now that I'm looking at certain things, I'm like, I put that on there? I wonder what that means. Well, you just have to be open to the word, right? So you can't say by January 1, I have to have my word. You've just got to go with it. So the funny thing for me this year was I knew the feeling that I wanted the word to represent, but I could not articulate the word. I was really struggling to put a word with the feeling. And again, I think that might be common for a lot of attorneys. And quite frankly, it's a feeling I don't have very much. So it definitely felt, it's not something that I feel like I have a great vocabulary around. But I'm really good at visualizing and I'm really good at being futuristic. So I could feel it. I could totally feel it. I could see it. I knew, how it would manifest in physical form, but I couldn't put a word to it. So I kept coming up with these words like happy, joy, more, flow, but they just weren't right. I mean, they were right, but they weren't right. It's got to be I don't want to say the perfect word, but you have to really get behind it if it's, going to lead you for an entire year. Because for me, it was something more than that. It was more than joy. It was more than happy. And that's what I was struggling with. And so I finally found the word. And I then went to the dictionary to make sure, by the way, when I say the dictionary, I mean dictionary.com. I went to the dictionary to say, is this even the right word? Am I using this in the right way? Because it just, again, I'm I don't even know that I know how to put words to this. And then I looked at a thesaurus, and you can do this too. So if you're playing around with words, you have some that you think are right, but they're not quite right. You can go to the thesaurus and say, okay, well, are there other words that represent these things that are a little bit more accurate? And just keep following the rabbit hole that way until you get to the perfect word for you. And the only thing that held me back was I was worried that it wouldn't make sense to other people. And then I had to remember this isn't for other people. Your vision board is not for other people. They don't have to understand what the visuals mean or represent. And if someone says, what does that mean? You don't even have to tell them. The plan that you come up with, it's not for other people, it's for you. Whether, whatever your rituals are, whether it's tarot cards or astrology or anything else, it's for you. It doesn't matter what other people think. It is for you. And so when I remembered that, I was like, it doesn't really matter if it makes sense to other people. It makes sense to me. So my word for 2019 is elated. Elated. I want to feel elated. I very much represent the typical lawyer brain in that a lot of times things are very black and white. I tend to just grind and hustle and work. I will put, work above fun any day of the week. And I will tell you it's because work is fun for me. And that's true to some degree, but that's also just a story and an excuse to another. And I often don't allow myself, that's what it is. I don't allow myself to truly feel elated because it feels a little bit uncomfortable and out of control for me. And I like to feel in control. But that's what I want more of this year. I want to feel elated. And when I looked up what that meant, it's more than happy. It's overjoyed. It's exactly what I was struggling with all those words. It needed to be a level above because I knew what happiness was. I knew what joy was, but it needed to be more than that for me if it was going to truly guide me and represent me, because I know my own tendencies. And so it's truly going to force me to get out of my home more. It's going to truly force me to have deeper experiences. It's truly going to force me to go have more fun, laugh more, dance more, just experience life more. And that doesn't mean that there, may not be bad days. I totally get the concept of, you can't always be happy and joyful, but I do want to make decisions around, does this make me feel elated? It's not going to be enough for it to just be okay. It's got to make me feel elated. So that is my word for 2019. I really encourage you to come up with your own word, whether you're doing vision boards, planning, astrology, tarot cards, whatever that looks like for you. I do encourage you to have some rituals, again, just so you can be intentional and so you can learn to not just use the left side of your brain, but the right side as well. It will truly guide you and help you stay focused on your priorities and what matters most to you. And I always have my annual mastermind ladies do a word of the year as well. And so we're going to do something special with it this year when we kick off in Austin in a few weeks. So anyway, for those of you listening on that, get prepared. It's going to be fun. So do something for yourself, pick your word of the year, and let me know what it is. Come on over to Facebook, Instagram. You can find me at Heather Joy Hubbard on both of those platforms. Leave a comment on the blog, reach out to me. Let me know what your word of the year is. Let me know what your new rituals are. And above all, please, please, please go to heatherjoyhubbard.com/record and please leave me a recording letting me know your favorite episode and why, so that we can celebrate 100 episodes of Hustle and Flow together. Have a great week, and I'll talk soon. I am super excited to announce that the Life and Law Planner is officially here. It is more than just a calendar. It is a full planning system. If you want to take back your days, your weeks, your months, and your year, order your planner now. It will completely change your life and help you accomplish your biggest goals. There's only a limited quantity available, so go to lifeandlawplanner.com and order yours today.